Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Skylar Romines with us, and Skylar is from Irvine. She went to UC Irvine, and are you now living in Irvine?
Pretty close, yeah. Still in Orange County.
So anyway, Southern Cal, is Irvine really considered Southern Cal anyway? It's great to have you, Skylar. I'd just love to hear kind of how you got into the famous insurance world and business.
Yeah, so it's funny. Nobody really plans to go into insurance. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now, and I can probably count on one hand the number of people who set out to do insurance, stayed in insurance, and that was kind of the career path that they chose, right? I was working at Nordstrom when I was in college, and my aunt worked in premium financing. She was an exec at, large premium financing corporation, and she said, "Hey, I was complaining about folding clothes until midnight and saying I really need to find something else to do." And she said, "Hey, why don't you go meet with a couple of the brokers that I work with and see if you can do something in insurance, right?" And I remember I went to like 3 or 4 interviews, and the lady I ended up working with asked me in my interview, "What do you know about insurance?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing. I have my own car insurance, and that's all I've ever done." And she said, "Okay." And, she was a much older lady, so she was really just looking for someone to help her on the tech side of things. And she goes, "Well, what do you know about Excel?" And I said, "Not a lot, but, give me a week and I'll figure out whatever you want me to know." And she goes, "Okay, you're hired. Like, if you can do if you can figure out the computer stuff for me, I can teach you insurance." And she really kind of did. So I was very lucky to start where I started and work with her for my first few years. But that's how I kind of fell into it. I thought it would be get me through college part-time thing. And here we are almost 2 decades later, still going strong.
So this started out as a college part-time job.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, absolutely no way after I graduate is this going to continue.
That's not, what'd you graduate with?
Psych and social behavior.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right down the road for insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it helps on the sales side, right? And just understanding people. That's what I always tell people. Like, it can't hurt. Psych is one of those things that it can't hurt. Like, it helps you understand day-to-day life a little bit better, but it doesn't translate that well to very many careers. So yeah, insurance is a great way to use that degree, I guess.
But fortunately, the person you started out with kind of threw you in the deep end, so to speak, and there were some big projects, and they weren't just household insurance or car insurance. It was completely different from that.
Yeah, yeah. She really did me the benefit. At the time, it felt like torture, but looking back, of course, it was a great benefit. My first mentor who I worked with would take me, into these rooms of, I always say, gray-haired old men. I was a 19-year-old girl who had no idea what was going on, right? And had no business being in those rooms. I always tell people, like, I felt so stupid in those first few meetings that I was in, but I had every right to feel stupid because I had no idea what was going on, right? I was completely validated in that feeling. But she really introduced me to, I think a lot of people in insurance have this, or the industry as a whole kind of has this mindset a lot of the time of introduce people to the most simple concepts and then, teach them one thing at a time, and maybe they'll grow and grow and grow. And maybe at some point they'll work on these big, large, complex accounts, and maybe they won't. Maybe they'll get really comfortable in middle market or whatever else. Whereas I just kind of got thrown into these massive complex accounts right away that I probably had no business even working on, but it ended up being such a great thing for my career because it was actually interesting. So it kept me, wanting to come back and be involved because we were solving really hard problems for people. And B, it really was in terms of where you enter the insurance industry, which I didn't know an underwriter from a broker, from a whatever when I started. I just kind of ended up where I ended up. I was pretty lucky to end up where I did, where, there was a lot of opportunity. I met a lot of, really successful people who were running these complex organizations and learned a lot about their businesses. And that helped me learn a lot about, my business and do better. So
now you label yourself as an insurance advisor. So is that different from being an insurance broker?
Yeah, I mean, the word advisor gets tossed around, I think, a lot. So some brokers will call themselves advisors too, which is confusing, right? I was a broker for 17 years, and then I launched ATW, which is a consulting firm. So we're essentially third-party consultants. We call ourselves owner's rep. You can call us an advisor. call me goldfish, call me whatever you want. We're kind of in the same role, right? So.
So do you work with a cadre of insurance companies, or you mostly work on the client side and then go to the insurance brokers?
Yeah, so we solely work on behalf of the client. So if you think about what an owner's rep does on a job site for construction, we effectively do that through the risk management and insurance procurement process. So owners, and we work predominantly with commercial real estate owners and developers, although as the firm grows, we get brought in on some private equity deals, some trucking, like we're kind of expanding a little bit, but really our bread and butter is still commercial real estate and developers, owners and developers. And they will bring us in to effectively help negotiate their insurance, but also look at their risk management practices, look at where can we put some CapEx on the front end to reduce insurance costs on the back end, and effectively how can we utilize insurance as a way to reduce overall spend and increase our NOI, right? And so that's what we do in a nutshell.
So are you basically sounds like you sort of take it soup to nuts in that you'll start out with a construction insurance policy and
Mhm.
then move that into a more permanent insurance policy, if I'm understanding you.
We can, yeah. I mean, it depends. Some clients we have are build and sell, and so they will just use us through the construction process. Then they sell to a third party, and we're out of the picture. Some are build and hold, so we would take them from that, like you said, from beginning to end, from their development risk to their operational risk, and kind of be with them every step of the way in between. The other part of what we do is we maintain an insurance brokerage network. So all of my prior competitors, when I was on the broker side, now effectively work as referral partners and a resource for us. So what we do is meet with a lot of the brokers who specialize in real estate and development nationwide on a regular basis. And we're aggregating data about the renewals that they're getting, the carriers they're working with, what kind of rates and terms they're putting together, what kinds of portfolios they're working on. And so aggregating all of that data and having that readily available, because it's not public data that people can just pull and look at. So the fact that we have access to that and can compile a lot of that data puts us in a better position to negotiate for our clients.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, on the real estate side, for example, there's CoStar LoopNet, which basically gives you a national database or international database of real estate. But it sounds like that kind of database does not exist on the insurance side.
Not really, not that I'm aware of. Somebody may be building it somewhere, and we're, kind of effectively building it internally, but it's not a, public platform or anything like that.
Right, right. So give us a little clue about what's happening out there let's start with the construction world. It's been a little slow lately, but is it starting to pick up?
Um, Yes and no. I mean, we've seen definite softening in the property market, and I think that's kind of mirrored in the builder's risk market. So, a few years ago, where let's say if you were doing a frame multifamily project, and depending on what state you were in and what time of year you were building, if you were in California in a high wildfire zone, there were a couple of years there where there were times that you really couldn't get insurance. And if you could, you could be at a dollar 20 cent rate and it could just blow your whole budget out of the water. I mean, I saw a few people walk away from projects because the insurance cost it made it, they couldn't do it. They just couldn't make the
Right.
numbers pencil because of the insurance. That's gotten a little bit softer. Now, still, if you're in, a 90 to 100% wildfire zone and you're building frame buildings, it's still going to be challenging. But it has softened up a little bit where now more carriers are kind of coming back to the table. Rates are starting to drop a little bit and it's a little bit more manageable. And on the fixed property side, so the operational side, we're seeing that even more, where a couple years ago we were truly, in one of the hardest markets we've ever seen. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I know people who have been doing this for 40, 50 years who said they've never seen a property market that hard. And so it was really, really challenging. I mean, from 2020 to about 2024, people were really struggling. I mean, that's when people were seeing those 30%, 50%, 100% increases on property sometimes, and there was just not a lot that they could do about it. We've seen that really start to soften. So what I would tell people now, I mean, on some of our recent renewals, we've seen 5, 10, 15, 20% decreases on the property side. We had a recent renewal with a client where they had a 32% decrease. That's not usual, but 32% decrease and some better policy terms. So we're seeing things soften both in terms of pricing and coverage on the property side, which is great. I mean, this is the time I keep telling my clients, this is the time when everybody wants to stop thinking about insurance again, right? Because it's been so hard
Right.
for the last few years. But this is really the time to, if you own multiple locations and you don't have a clean insurance program, negotiate that with the carriers and get yourself a good master program now because the market will harden again. And if you
Mm.
have that, competitive insurance program set up now, you position yourself much better for the next time we're in that cycle. Now, all of this to say that's on the property side. On the liability side, we're kind of
Oh,
we're on the exact opposite position, right? Where the market's really starting to harden. Globally, it's not as bad, but the US liability market is really bad. And a lot of that has to do with our legal system and how tort law works and everything
oh,
else. So especially when we talk about multifamily owners,
mm.
or some retail, some industrial, if you've got a lot of access to the public, a lot of potential for slip and falls, a lot of potential to get sued, we're seeing those rates go up quite a bit. But really the asset class that's getting hit the hardest on the liability side is multifamily because of the residential component, right? So carriers are not only increasing their rates, but they're starting to carve out coverage. So they're carving out things like abuse and molestation, assault and battery, firearms, animal injuries.
Oh, wow.
Not only is that problematic, but a lot of, the Fannies and Freddies of the world require those things. A lot of lenders require those coverages. And so then people are put in a position of, well, my carrier can't give me the coverage. Do I need to effectively self-insure for this? Do I need to get a standalone policy just for abuse and molestation or assault and battery, which can sometimes cost as much as your GL policy. So it can double your cost. So that's where the struggle has been lately. Liability as a whole for most real estate operators is not as big a cost as the property side is. But
Right.
when you're faced with some of those things, when you're carving out coverage that potentially could be multi-million-dollar lawsuits and you don't have the coverage you had before, that can be really meaningful on the back end. So that's where we've seen things really start to tighten up lately.
So do you get involved at all in the certificates of insurance for tenants?
No,
No,
not
no.
really
Yeah,
in my side.
you're on the owner side versus
Yeah.
say the tenant side. Yeah.
So we will help our clients to negotiate their contracts, both with tenants and vendors, to make sure that their insurance requirements are, best practice and they're getting all the things that they need, the additional insured waivers of subrogation, things like that. But we don't issue any insurance certificates. We also will train our clients. We have what we call an insurance 101 training that sometimes we'll put our clients through, especially if they have, property management arm or someone who's reviewing
Mm.
all of their certs that they're receiving. We'll put them through like a 1 or 2 day training on it's what everyone wants to do with their day or two, right?
Oh, oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
for
most
sure.
favorite thing to do. Let's get
Yeah.
some insurance training. Yeah.
Yeah. Four
Probably
hours a day for a day or two of just deep dive into what to look for in your certificates of insurance. But actually, the feedback we get on that is really good because a lot of people spend a lot of time doing that and just don't know what to look for. And so, just kind of having that information is very helpful.
So I'm curious, how do you get paid? It doesn't sound like you get paid by the insurance carriers. The client pays you.
Yeah, yeah, we only get paid by the owners who hire us. So some people will hire us on a transactional basis. So they'll come in and say, hey, we just want you to run this broker selection RFP for us, or we just want you to do an audit of our program, or we just want you to look at this from a compliance standpoint and see if our insurance is what it should be. And then some people hire us on an annual basis where we truly act as an owner's rep and kind of that outsourced CRO type of role where from beginning to end, we're handling the risk management and insurance functions.
Yeah. So who out there is sort of your sweet spot in terms of the clients you like to work with best?
We have clients nationwide now, and it's real estate owners and developers. We're asset class agnostic, we're geographically agnostic. The tougher it is, the more we can probably help. And so we like stuff with a little bit of hair on it. If you just have a couple of locations and your insurance rates are already pretty low, it probably doesn't make sense to hire us because we're not going to be able to restructure your program or change the broker or do all the things that we can kind of do to negotiate lower rates for you. But anyone who's having trouble with their insurance, is somebody that we want to talk to.
Well, And
And there's a lot of people out there in that
yeah,
position
I
right
was
now.
going to say there's probably a lot of people
Yeah.
out there having trouble with insurance right now. I know probably the majority of my clients are always calling and saying, "Hey, do you know somebody?" So, it's a key factor in terms of everybody's NOI right now. It used to be, oh yeah, yeah, we'll get some insurance. And now it's like, oh my God, what do I do about insurance? So,
Right. Yeah, there were years where it was just, hey, we'll just plug in a 2 or 3% increase every year and not think about it, right? Nobody wanted to even talk about insurance. And then when the market got so hard, we really started getting more C-suite attention on the insurance issues, more ownership attention. And, from my perspective, it gives my business a lot of opportunity because we can come in and we try to kind of be a bridge between the client and their broker, right? But a lot of times clients will come to us and they're like, we don't even know, we hear XYZ from our peers, but we don't even really know what we should be paying and there's no way to figure it out. And, we don't think we're getting the rates we should be getting, but is it a broker problem? Is it a carrier problem? Are we doing something wrong? So that's where we can come in and kind of help them clean things up on their end and then do the negotiating with the brokers and the carriers on the back end.
you keep saying we, so how big is your firm?
Not big, not big. We're growing. Yeah, so it's a couple people right now and we'll be a couple more in 2026 and we're
Yeah.
just gonna
So
continue to grow.
always a nice size firm, a small firm, but growing.
Yes, yeah.
That's great. Well, I mean, that bodes well for giving very personal service, I'm sure.
That's the goal. Yeah. I mean, really the issue that I ran into pretty quickly was, not having enough business, which was my biggest fear before launching the firm, right? But the biggest issue we ran into was potentially having too much business and that fear of growing too fast. And how do we make sure that we're still giving our clients the level of service that they've grown accustomed to? But I don't want to hire a bunch of people. And then this happened to be a fluke that we wrote this much business this fast and 6 months from now, so all of those new challenges that you're faced with as a business owner versus, after working for someone else for so long.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting transition to go through for sure. But it sounds like you're doing very, very well in terms of putting it all together and clients are responding well.
It's been great so far. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but it's been better than I could have expected. So,
Yeah. So what's your famous crystal ball say about the future?
I think for the foreseeable future, liability will continue to be the biggest challenge for most people. Um, I probably would have a better answer for you on the property side in January, so a couple months from now, right after those 1/1 reinsurance renewals hit. I haven't seen any indicators this year that would make me believe that we're headed back into a hard market on the property side anytime immediately. What we are seeing is the wind and hail modeling is starting to expand, so more locations in the Midwest are starting to be considered in kind of really high risk wind hail areas. And so they're getting hit with things like higher wind hail deductibles, higher rates on the property side in some cases. But, the states that were having the hardest time a few years ago, California, Florida, Texas, those coastal areas that we really saw get hit with sometimes 100% or more increases on the property side. We're not seeing the same challenges now. Things have kind of really cooled off where more capacity is entering the market and that drives rates down, right? So we really are in that soft period of the market cycle.
So how are government regulations affecting you? Is that a problem or not really?
It's a highly regulated industry, so there are always challenges, right? We don't see, the firm at this point is solely in the commercial space. We will help our clients on a personal lines matter if they need help. We have some referral partners who are excellent personal lines brokers that I will send clients to work with. But I would say where we've really seen legislative issues become a problem is on the personal line side more than in our space. So it really hasn't impacted our business as much. Knock on wood.
Yeah,
Hopefully it
yeah.
stays that way. But I don't envy the personal lines brokers and consultants out there who are dealing with that because it's been a massive challenge, especially in states like California.
How about the famous reinsurance world? Are you involved in that at all?
Yeah, I mean, reinsurance is always important to watch, right, on a global scale, because what happens in the reinsurance world is really kind of the best leading indicator of what's going to trickle down and happen in your next renewals, right? And so, like I just alluded to, the 1/1 property reinsurance renewal, it's about 75% of the US reinsurance renewals happen on 1/1. And so after that, you have a much clearer picture of what things are going to be like for the year to come. And then the only other time I really get involved in reinsurance at all is if you have a client who's set up a captive or something like that, and they're going direct to reinsurance, then we'll kind of help facilitate that. But, we don't, again, not a brokerage. And so we're not actually placing any of that risk, but we can kind of handhold and help the client through the process.
That's fantastic. Well, okay, so I think we should probably talk again after the first of the year because it sounds like things may settle out, they may change. So
Definitely.
I would look forward to conversing with you again in the near future to see how that whole property situation comes out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how hurricane season shakes out and how the reinsurance renewal shake out really determines what the property market will look like for next year. So like I said, knock on wood, at this point, I don't have any reason to believe it would be harder than it is today, but there are a lot of factors, unfortunately, that could change that at any time.
So if a client that's listening or a person listening to this podcast, if they have an insurance question, where would they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Skylar Romines, or they can email me. I think you can see the email here on the screen. So it's just skylar@atwadvisors.com.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I look forward to talking to you again. And this has been very informative and very interesting. So insurance now is becoming a big, big deal.
It is. It is. Anytime you can walk away from a discussion about insurance and someone says it was informative and interesting, you feel like you've won. So, so thank you for that.
I think it was a very winning conversation. So
I
thank you
appreciate you having me.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.